Hey everybody, I'm Brianna Hodges.
I'm Lainey Rowell.
And we are back for episode 2 of Lemonade Learning. One of the things that we wanted to, actually we were having this conversation, Lainey and I were talking through where are we in the world today? And it's, early May. And one of the things that we've seen happen a lot is schools making it official, states making it official that in-person learning face-to-face is not happening in our brick and mortar schools for the remainder of the school year. And so we've been what does that mean? What does that look like for us? Excuse me. And how can we handle those things as we move forward?
Yeah, and it's for Bree, for you and I as coaches, this is where we start to go, okay, it's time to get past that crisis. How do we get through this in the short term and start to really dig in and think about not only how do we do our best finish of the school year, but what are the implications for the fall, which there's plenty of articles to get your mind wandering as to what will be happening in the fall. The reality is no one knows. But I think for you and I, we're trying to figure out how do we have that get through, do the best we can now, but also have that long view of what will this potentially look like on the other side of at least where we are right now. So I think we've got some really fun things to share today as far as, I love our topic. Could someone else do this for me? Because personally, I have a lot right now, and I know I'm not alone. In fact, I'm probably not even in the top of busy people, but I've had this on my mind, and I know you and I've talked about this, what could we let go of, or what could maybe someone else be doing for us? So I know we always talk about our sweet and our sour and our lemonade. So I'm going to start off by just sharing mine right out of the gate. Here's my sweet and my sour. So my sour is, I woke up this morning, and it was one of those mornings that gets started pretty early. The meetings are happening early. There's just a lot going on at the beginning of my day. And I usually even try and get a little bit of homeschooling in, or distance learning, whatever we're calling it today. I usually try and get a little bit of that in before my work actually starts. And that was not going to happen today. That did not happen. It was a rough morning getting everyone going, and in a panic because I'm running late to get to my first virtual conference. My daughter says, can I have eggs, scrambled eggs? And I'm thinking, who are you? Do you think I'm going to make scrambled eggs right now? I can't do scrambled eggs. I'm barely going to make my meeting. And oh, sorry, sweetie, I can't do that. And then she just looks at me and she goes, well, can I do it? And it was a bittersweet moment because it was so sweet that she offered, and it was bitter because I was like, how did it not occur to me to let her do it? I mean, I'm so in the mindset of rescuing right now that it was hard for me to take a step back and think, she wants eggs. I can't make her eggs. How can eggs happen? She can make her own eggs. And so it was perfect. She's 9. It was all perfectly safe. I assure you, there was another adult overseeing. And she was so happy to do it. It was so empowering for her. And it was just a real, like I said, it was a sour that it was a challenging morning, but the sweetness that came out of my little girl just saying, it's okay, Mom, I'll do it. And it was just such a great day. It was such a great day.
Oh my goodness. Seeing our kids take on new responsibilities, right? It's like when you watch them when they're babies and you're asking them, you're working with them to try to say those words, right? And that's all you want. And then before you know it, they won't stop talking. But those are those moments when you get to see them in ways that our hearts might not necessarily be ready for. So I can definitely appreciate that. But good for you for having that bravery to be able to do that. That's really hard as a mom to say, yeah, sure, you can do that, right? There's some things that we can't, you can't cut your own hair, but you can definitely make some eggs. And so good, kudos on that. All right, so my sour this week is recognizing, our school, we're not going to be seeing our teachers in real life for the remainder of the year. And one of the things that comes along with that is being able to say goodbye to those people, to hug those teachers' necks, to hug the ones who are retiring. So we had some news that came in this last week with my daughter who loves and adores all of her teachers. She's actually, in her situation, she's moving to a new school because in our district they transition every 2 years. And so she's moving into a new campus next year. And I think it just really hit her, like bold-faced hit her this last week, that she's not going to get to say goodbye to those teachers that she absolutely adores this year. And she had her librarian that she was actually my librarian when I was at the same elementary school a million years ago. And she has seen both of my kids through this campus, and she's retiring this year. And so it's just all of this like lack of closure for her, that just kind of left her with this, where am I going to go? And I'll be honest, like it was a huge sour for me, because I want those things for her. I want those things for her as a mom, and I want those things for her as an educator. And I want those things for those teachers. I want them to be able to hug her and tell her that they've loved having her and that they can't wait to watch her grow. And so it was hard. It was hard. The sweet of that came in knowing that there's still going to continue to be opportunities. The great thing about that was Delaney really kind of brainstormed on her own all these different ways that she could stay in contact with her teachers, and that she could send them different things to say thank you and to remind herself as well as her teachers of the impact that they've had on them, which of course made my mom's heart just absolutely explode. And so it's a lot to remember right now, that our little guys and our big guys are definitely processing this and trying to figure out where they're going to come from. But all of that said, if we just give them perhaps a little tiny bit of guidance and a little bit of hugs along the way, they're coming up with some pretty fantastic ways to navigate this themselves.
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, I think we always want to rescue them, but they actually come up with great stuff on their own. And so if that's a possible silver lining from this, it's that they're figuring out really how to do things on their own. And I love that problem solving, like how to stay in touch. Like that's so beautiful. And I like, it got chills. Oh, it's so hard. It's like a tough enough transition when you're moving from one grade level to the next, but to have this be the transition to a whole new school, that's definitely a challenge. But I'm proud of both of our girls, by the way, for being problem solvers and self-sufficient. And I think that's something we can definitely refocus our energy on, is how can we empower not only our own personal kids, our biological children, but the kids that we get to work with on a regular basis. So Bree, I think what I hear us talking about really is a theme that you and I have been passionate about for a very long time, and that's voice and choice, right? How can we give learners that opportunity, and specifically in this situation with remote learning? So I know you have some ideas about self-interests and how we can incorporate voice and choice there. So I'm going to ask you to share.
So one of the things that I think is really important that I try to remind myself of every time I'm in the classroom is that number one, we have to know why it is that we're teaching something. And then we, as teachers, once we know why we're teaching it, then we very quickly decide what it is that we're going to teach. And what I mean by that is, are we going to teach a very specific standard? You know, what is the piece that we're after? And oftentimes we get confused whenever we throw in that phrase voice and choice, because we think that means, oh, kids get to pick whatever it is that they want. And how can I possibly handle, doing this with 30 kids in my classroom and all of that? And I think that's missing the mark a little bit. What I want to focus on whenever I talk about voice and choice is giving kids that opportunity to decide how they're going to do it, right? So like as teachers, we have our why and we have our what, but turn that over to our students to find out that how. So that could look like maybe the student is really passionate about video, and so they want to use video to demonstrate their learning, whereas a classmate might be terribly shy and doesn't want to share their face on video, but rather would want to, is very gifted as a writer, and so wants to write a story about it, or illustrate something, or draw something, or whatever the case may be. But give them that opportunity to show how much they know and how they've learned it, as opposed to dictating that for them.
I love that so much. And that kind of makes me think about self-assessment, because a lot of times when you're turning the how over to them, you still have to give them some parameters. And I typically think of rubrics. This is something that, you and I know for online learning, your directions and your rubric have to be super tight, because you're pushing it out and you're not going to see their faces as they're doing the assignment. You're not going to know if they're understanding your expectations. So being really, really clear on that rubric and those directions is essential. And then when we're talking about voice and choice and empowering our learners, we don't want them to just turn in that video project or just turn in that written essay just straight to us. They should at least be self-assessing. And I hope we talk about this in another episode. I'd like to talk about peer assessment too, peer feedback. But we want them to take that rubric and actually look at it and say, this is how I'm doing, and teach them to see where they're needing to work harder on. And that, I think, is a really good first step in getting them to be more independent learners and feeling more empowered. So I love what you said about like letting the how be up to them. We just got to give them, this is what we're wanting to see, so we know that you understand this. I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. I think it's, we've said it a million times, right? Like this is our kids' opportunity to learn, and it's our kids' opportunity to show what they know, not to just, regurgitate or to simply mimic what they have heard us do over and over again. It's really for them to put their own spin on it, to empower them, to help them teach us, because I think that that's really what ends up happening more than anything, is that they wow us and they blow us away with their understanding and their abilities off of what we've shown them.
Well, and I'm a big fan of like the video tutorial creation. So I love the idea of a kid or a student creating a video that actually can then in turn be used to help another child who's struggling with it. And I just listened to a podcast, Alan November interviewing Eric Mazur, and they had a very in-depth conversation about how different the explanation is peer-to-peer versus from teacher to student. So if you empower the kids to create the explanation, like in a video tutorial, and then that can be shared with peers, that's so empowering, and it's an authentic audience. So to me, that's like win-win. That's and
we know proximity to knowledge is a huge thing, and we know that the closer they are to that aha moment, the more that they understand it. Whereas some of us have forgotten when and where we learned that along the way. So I absolutely love that. I think also kind of thinking through what that could look like for us for the future. What a fantastic way to house a bunch of these tutorials. You started off today's episode by saying, I didn't have time to do this. And then all of a sudden your daughter is stepping in and is become quite the egg chef. How can we do this as teachers? Don't we say that all the time? I don't have time to create all these tutorials. I don't have time to do all this. And you're absolutely right. Let's let these people who understand it, who these little learners that now know this information, let's let them put it in their own words. And now all of a sudden we have a repository of videos or of whatever format that they have. Maybe now you have some infographics and some videos and all different kinds of things that will help learners understand stuff in the way that they best understand in words that they understand as well.
That kid language. And I love how you point out it doesn't just have to be video tutorials. So you're in essence turning your learners into content creators, to curriculum designers, and then they're creating for a variety of learners. And so it's not just me doing it the way that I would do it because this is how I would learn it. Your variety and content is going to be amazing. Okay, I'm just going to say this, Brie. We have to do a full episode on peer-to-peer learning. Like, I'm just getting too excited talking about this, and I could go on forever, and we have promised to be brief and helpful, and hopefully we've accomplished that in this. But I think if people walk away from this episode feeling ready to maybe take a leap in empowering learners to create content, or even just to be more independent and to self-assess, any of that happening, I think, is a huge win right now. Such a big
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to ask your kids. Don't be afraid to ask your kids for the answers, right? Like we feel like we have to have all the answers, but we don't need the answers. ask them, hey, how would you like to show me how that you know this? And you'll be blown away by their responses, and start to curate all of those, and we're going to be ahead of the game before you know it.
Learning from kids, it is definitely part of the answer. I think so. All right, Bree. So we hopefully have given people some concrete tips that they can walk away and feel like they're ready to maybe let go a little bit more, be more strategic in when they insert themselves for help. And, the title of this episode is, Could Someone Else Do This For Me? I hope that doesn't sound bad. What do you think? Is that question okay to ask even?
I think it's okay to ask. I think the thing that we have to remember is why we're asking it. We're not asking it like, oh, I want to push my responsibility off to somebody else. That's not at all what we're saying. What we're saying is let other people be the ones who get to do the things that they're most interested in doing now. Instead of it just being my way and I'm the only one who can do it, and if I can't do it for you, then no, you can't have it. Give everybody else in your world, whether it's in your house or whether it's in your classroom, the opportunity to show what their contributions are to our world, to our society, to our learning, and to our family, and to their own education.
I'm excited, Bree. I mean, this is one of those things you and I've talked about, like, there's gonna be wins after this and along the way. And I'm excited to think that we rethink empowering our learners, giving them more voice and choice. This is good. This is good. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you guys soon.